Much like the space race of the 50s and 60s, two brand behemoths have been jockeying position as having the best smokeless fire pit on the market. Breeo has just launched their new Y-Series fire pit, so can they take out the top spot? Let's find out. There's generally three things that people want to know about smokeless fire pits. First, are they really smokeless? Second, what kind of ambient heat do they put out? Or will I still be cold by the fire? And how is it different from everything else that's on the market? Now we're going to answer all of these questions and more in detail. So let's get down to it. The specifications are a great place to start so we know what we're working with in the Breeo Y-Series. Now right out of the package, the first thing that draws my eye are the 3 height adjustable legs on the Breeo Y-Series. Now there really aren't many smokeless fire pits that have any kind of legs right now, so this raises the bar right out of the gate. Now the legs are adjustable to heights of 11 inches fully closed, 15 inches for fire pit mode, also called burn mode, and 20 inches for when you're using it for cooking, called cook mode. Now the diameter of the fire pit is 21 inches on the outside and 17.5 inches on the interior. The Y-Series weighs in 31 pounds and is also made of 304 stainless steel. Now Breeo manufactures their fire pits in the United States in Pennsylvania, so this is a US-based company and is fully manufactured in the United States. Now in the box you'll find the Y-Series and cardboard packing materials. That's pretty much it. I personally use the packing materials as my kindling for a few fires, since everything that ships in the box is something that you can burn. Just a little tip for the savvy buyer who wants to give the packaging a second use. Now as far as assembly for the Y-Series, there isn't any. Just take it out of the box, set the legs to the height you want, and you're ready to light a fire. So here's one of the million-dollar questions. Is the Breeo Y-Series smokeless? Now to answer that question, we need to look at how the fire pit works. On the bottom of the pit, you'll see a Y-shaped raised section that houses the air intake holes. This lets air into the fire even when the ash starts to accumulate on the bottom. Now the pit is also double walled, so you'll have cold air rising through the walls that gets super hot and exits through the holes on the interior wall to cause a reburn of any particulate matter before it exits the pit. Does that make sense? Now, it really all boils down to the fact that the Y-Series is indeed a smokeless fire pit. Now, the secondary ignition of that super hot air that's coming up the double walls is what consumes the smoke. So it's really once you get to the stage where there's that secondary fire coming out the top of the holes in the inner ring that you've achieved smokeless with the Y-Series. I often get asked what the quickest way is to get a fire pit to smokeless, and my advice is to build your fire as close as you can to the outer walls to encourage that superheated air that creates the fire around the inner ring. Now here in a minute we'll tell you which fuel type is our favorite to get the most smokeless burn. Now the Breeo Y-Series is extremely versatile when it comes to fuel. The de facto standard fuel for almost any fire pit is wood splits. And the Y-Series does great with wood. One of the fuels that is rather unique that the Y-Series can use is charcoal, and there's not many out there that can say the same. It's really a triple threat though, since it can also use wood pellets for fuel. Now if you've never used wood pellets in a fire pit, it's pretty simple. You just load in a couple of inches of pellets across the entire bottom of the fire pit, leaving the raised Y still exposed for maximum airflow. Light 2 or 3 fire starters spread out in the pellets and watch them slowly spread the fire to the surrounding pellets. In our experience, we found that this method took a much longer time to reach a full burn, but was a convenient option when all of the wood left on our wood rack was too long for this size of a fire pit. Note to self, get a chainsaw. Now personally, a wood fire in the Y is by far my favorite, but the ability to burn charcoal and pellets is also nice to have in my back pocket as additional options. There are 3 height settings for the Y-Series, and here's what each one is designed for. The first is called stow. This is how you'll leave the legs when you're storing the fire pit, during the off season, or when you're transporting it to the tailgate or campsite. The second setting is called burn, and this is how you'll set the legs when you're using it as a fire pit. Now we'll cover what surfaces this is safe to use on in a second, but while we're talking about the height setting, the final setting is the cook setting. This is the height that you'll set it to when you're using the griddle or grill attachment. Breeo calls the griddle the sear plate griddle, and the grill grate is called the outpost grill. A cooking height of 20 inches is high enough that when you add the grill and adjust it for distance from the fire, it's quite comfortable to cook with. Now we've got some cooking tests coming up here in a minute that you won't want to miss. Now after the fire is out and the Y-Series has cooled down, here's what we had left after burning about 15 splits of wood. There's quite a bit of small wood chunks that have turned to charcoal in the bottom, and you could use them in your next cook if you wanted. But there's still some BTUs left in there, but if you want to clean up the ash before you light it up again, there's 3 ways that I would recommend. Now the first is to pick up Breeo's ash shovel and lift the ash into a bucket once it's cold. The second way is to just lift up the Y-Series and dump it by using the handle and one of the legs to flip it completely over where you want the ash to fall. Now if you're like me and have lousy aim, you'll end up getting ash all over the patio and make more of a mess than you started with. I guess I needed a bigger ash pan, but lastly, and my personal favorite, we just grabbed the shop vac the next day after a fire, we wave the wand around and poof, we're ready for the next fire. Now, one of the questions that always seems to hover around smokeless fire pit discussions is how well they allow ambient heat to warm people sitting around them. Now, the question makes sense because most stainless steel smokeless fire pits have a solid metal side that's double walled to allow air to rise and be heated to provide a secondary combustion. So heat isn't coming straight out from the fire pit because it's rising through it. Now heat tends to exit the top of the fire pit in a conical shape that starts at the top of the fire pit wall, and the Y-Series is really no different here. You can feel the heat standing next to the fire more than you can when you're sitting next to the fire, and that's one of the trade-offs with smokeless fire pits. We picked up a thermal imaging camera to show you what it looks like when the Y-Series is lit up, and you can see from the image that when seated, there's very little yellow to indicate that there's heat reflected off our model Addie. Now when she stands up though, you can see where the side facing the fire turns yellow, indicating that the fire is warming her at that height. Now the next question people usually ask is, where can I use this fire pit? Is it safe to use over grass or on a wood deck? What about Trex style decking? Will it melt since it's burning so hot? Well, we tested the Y-Series on our paver patio and we had no discoloration over about 10 different burns at the burn or cook height settings. We also ran a couple of fires over grass and we didn't have any discoloration issues with the grass the fire pit was over. Now, over a week later and the grass isn't any worse for the wear. We also wanted to test if it would be fine to use on a wood deck, but we don't have a wood deck. So we grabbed a sheet of wood that we had sitting in the garage and lit a fire right on top of that piece of wood. After a good long burn, you can see exactly how the wood looked when we pulled the fire pit off. No discoloration or raised sections on the wood. It looks the same as it did before we burned a fire on top of it. So it gets the green light from us. Now, just to show you how hot it got underneath the bottom of the fire pit, we used our infrared thermometer to get a read on the heat levels, and here's what we saw. We were getting consistent temperature readings directly below the fire pit between 115 and 120 degrees while there was a fire directly on top in the Y-Series. We even checked other parts of the board around the fire, and we got readings in the 110 to 115 degree range, so it was barely warmer directly under the fire than what we were seeing on the rest of the board. Now, after working with 8 to 10 fire pits over the last 2 years, we've learned that not all fire pits are created equal when it comes to how portable they are. Most of them aren't easy to just pick up and go since there's no handle on them, and that's one of the things that Breeo is looking to change in this game. There's a lovely articulating handle that's attached to the side of the fire pit, making it easy to pick up and carry like you would carry on luggage for an airplane. Just grab the handle and lift, and you're on your way. Now this is where the adjustable legs also come into play, so you're not banging into the 3 legs when you're walking around. This position is called the stow position, and the legs aren't an issue when they're completely hidden away. One of the primary reasons that we would want a portable fire pit is to cook with it when we're at camping or tailgating. The Y-Series makes use of the outpost grill system through a port that's prepped right into the top of the fire pit. Just insert the outpost and the grill attaches easily. Now we cook steak kebabs on the outpost grill, and they got some great char on the veggies, and the steak came out a perfect medium rare, just how we like it around here. Now next up, we cooked some Porter Road bratwurst and some corn on the cob for elote salad, or called esquites for those further south in the US. We started the corn out in their husks, and as the corn cooked, layers came off until we had just the corn and were able to get some great char for the salad. The brats started to brown really quickly with the height that we had chosen for the grill, and I love that the height is adjustable like an Argentine grill, so we just raised the outpost grill up and we were able to control the cook how we wanted it. There's also a griddle attachment for the Y-Series that Breeo calls the sear plate griddle. It just sits right on top of the fire pit, and it nestles in tight so there's no movement when you're making smash burgers and really pressing down on the sear plate. But that's a feature that I really need to have on my griddle attachments, since we tend to make smash burgers for guests about once a week in different settings. When we're out and about and throw the Y-Series into the back of the truck, we will take the griddle with us and take smash burgers on the go. Now we're looking forward to some upcoming camping that we have scheduled, and the Y-Series and the sear plate are coming along for pancakes, bacon, and eggs. Now, unlike some of their competitors, this fire pit is designed to sit out in the elements. With other fire pits, you need to make sure that they're always covered or out of the rain, or else the ash and soot will gum up the air intake and it won't operate as well for the next cook. Now, one of Breeo's taglines is treat your fire pit like a fire pit. And then I gotta admit, it's been a while since I feel like I've been able to do that with a fire pit that we've tested around here. I usually have to check the weather overnight to see if there's any chance that it might rain. And if there's any rain coming, we probably don't make a fire that evening. So Breeo has taken the complication out of that. If you just leave this fire pit out in the rain, it's fine. Just clean it out and you're good to burn again. Will it be easier to clean before it rains? Well, sure. Wet ash is harder to clean, but it's not going to mess up the air intakes to any substantial degree since they're raised in the Y section of the bottom of the fire pit. There's even an ad where they drop a load of firewood on a fire pit to show that it's built to stand up to a beating like a fire pit should. Now, I don't know about you, but I want my fire pit to be able to take a beating and keep going. There's a lifetime warranty on the Y-Series, and you can learn more about that on the Breeo.co website. If you're wondering how the Y-Series stands up to the competition, that's really a whole other video. But luckily, we've got that one publishing later today, and you can find it here in the description or at the end card if you'd like to watch that. We take the 2 leaders in smokeless fire pits and run them through a ton of tests to see who comes out on top. Now let's talk about who this unit is the best fit for. If you're looking for a portable fire pit that is easy to carry around, is able to take a beating, and has options for live fire cooking, then this is the fire pit for you. Now, who isn't this for? If you're not interested in ever moving your fire pit off your back patio, then you ought to check out the X-Series by Breeo. The Y-Series is designed for those who want maximum versatility and functionality in their outdoor fire pit that they don't feel like they have to baby or always put on gloves when they move it. Now, if you're interested in the Y-Series, we put a link in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, please consider clicking our link to head over to the Breeo website. This link is an affiliate link, and it will support the channel at no additional cost to you. Consider it a vote that our content was helpful in your decision-making process and which fire pit is the best pit for you. If outdoor cooking and outdoor living is your thing, please consider subscribing. We put out 2 to 3 videos per week on the best gear, techniques, and recipes in outdoor living and outdoor cooking, and our goal is to help you to have the backyard that everyone wants an invitation to. If you like to entertain others around the grill, then we've designed this channel for you. We'd love to have you join us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and the other social channels where we show you behind the scenes of what's happening at the lab, and we're able to get a little more personal there as well. So we look forward to meeting you and interacting with you on those channels. Now, what do you think about the Breeo Y-Series fire pit? Leave a comment down below and let us know if you think this has changed the game. I'm David Gafford, and I want to say thank you for joining us today on the Barbecue Lab. There's some great content coming up that you're not going to want to miss, so hit that subscribe button, and I can't wait to see you next time.